they said. The villagers never questioned the smoke rising from the chapel. At first, it was thought to be candles, incense, perhaps the priest burning away dampness that clung to the old stone walls. But those who dared to peek through the iron-barred windows swore the smoke did not smell of wood, nor wax. It was thicker, heavier odor that clung to the throat, metallic and bitter. The chapel itself had stood for centuries older than the village that grew around it. Some whispered it had been built on older ground, a site where blood had been spilled long before the first cross was ever carved. The priest, Father Malrick, was not a man born to the town. He had arrived, unannounced, carrying only a tattered book bound in leather that no one dared touch, and an iron key that opened no visible lock. At first, he spoke of salvation, of rituals meant to cleanse the soul. The villagers, poor and desperate for hope, obeyed. They fasted when he told them to. They lit candles at dawn, just as he instructed. And when he said the old chapel demanded offerings, they brought forth bread, wine, livestock, anything to please their new shepherd. But Father Malrick never seemed satisfied. The book whispered to him at night, or so the sexton claimed. Strange words, in a tongue no one else could read, seeped into his prayers. And then came the disappearances. A farmer's son, vanishing after evening mass. A widow, last seen kneeling in the pews. Each time, the priest would lower his head and murmur, "The chapel has been fed." By the time they realized what was truly being offered, it was too late. One storm-ridden night, the bell of the chapel rang without hands to pull its rope. The villagers gathered at the gates, and through the windows. They saw Father Malrick standing before the altar, his robe soaked in crimson. In his hands, the leather-bound book pulsed, as though alive. Behind him, shadows moved, shapes not cast by flame, but crawling, writhing things that filled the air with whispers. He turned to his flock and declared, the final offering must be made. The villagers fled that night, leaving behind their homes, their fields, their dead. By dawn, the chapel was empty, its door ajar, the altar bare. Father Malrick was gone, but the book remained. Travelers who pass through the ruins today swear the chapel is never truly silent. Step too close to its altar, and you may hear it. The echo of the bell, the hiss of unseen voices, and the promise that one day, another offering will be demanded. And when that day comes, the chapel will not ask. It will take *. The villagers, who fled that night, tried to bury the memory of the chapel. They spoke little of Father Malrick, and less of the book. Children born in the years after were warned never to wander near the ruins. Some obeyed, others did not. A century passed. The world changed, but the chapel did not. Its stones blackened, its roof rotted, yet the bell, though rusted, still hung, waiting. Travelers who camped nearby often woke to the sound of it tolling. At midnight, though no wind moved, no hand touched the rope. In 1894, a scholar named Dr. Elias Herring arrived in the region. He had heard rumors of the hollow chapel and sought to collect its history. A rational man, he dismissed the stories of sacrifices as rural superstition. Yet when he set foot inside, he felt it a heaviness, like invisible hands pressing down on his chest. The altar was still stained. The air still carried that metallic temps, as though the stone itself bled. And in the center, half buried under rubble, he found it. The book. Its leather was cracked, yet warm to the touch. Its pages whispered when he turned them, though no wind stirred. Dr. Herring wrote in his journals that the words within were alive. He could not read the language, yet somehow he understood the message. The text spoke of cycles, of blood debts, of a hunger that never ended. Each generation, it said, must provide a final offering. That night, the bell rang again. Villagers reported seeing the scholar wandering through the streets at dawn, his clothes torn, his eyes wide and unblinking. He carried the book pressed against his chest, muttering over and over, The chapel has chosen. The chapel remembers. Days later, Dr. Herring was found dead, his body laid neatly on the altar. No sign of struggle, no wounds, save for one, a deep cut across his palm, as though he had willingly spilled his own blood upon the stone. The book was gone. They say it surfaces still, always in the hands of those who should never touch priests who fall to madness. Scholars obsessed with forbidden knowledge, and wanderers drawn to the ruins by dreams they cannot explain. Each time, it demands the same dot, not food, not gold, not prayers. But lives. The final offering is never truly final. It waits, patient, hungry, eternal, and somewhere in the shadows of the old chapel, the bell still waits to toll again. Not all who dared to approach the chapel returned. By the early 20th century, the ruins had become a place of quiet dread. Travelers avoided the road that wound past it, and those who did pass spoke of figures moving in the window silhouettes where no one lived. The locals whispered that the chapel was not abandoned at all, that it was waiting. In 1932, during the winter famine, the town was starving. Livestock had withered. Children were dying in their beds. Desperation drove them to remember what they had tried to forget. The elders gathered in secret, recalling the old words of Father Malrick, the ones their parents had passed down, in fearful whispers. The chapel provides when the chapel is fed. And so, one frigid night, they led a young orphan girl to the steps of the ruins. Her cries echoed through the skeletal trees, but the villagers hardened their hearts. One more life for the survival of many, they told themselves. They left her at the altar, the bell tolling on its own, as snow fell heavy outside. By morning, the girl was gone. In her place were baskets of grain, barrels of salted meat, and clean water, filling the broken font. The famine ended. The village survived, but no one ever spoke of it again. Decades passed. The war came and went. The village grew smaller, its people scattering to cities and beyond. Yet the chapel remained untouched by time, untouched by ruin. Those who did return claimed the place had changed. The stone seemed darker, the windows warped, and beneath the altar, where once there was only earth, a deep crack had opened, like the mouth of something buried, breathing. In 1971, a group of students from the city, curious about the stories, camped by the chapel. They laughed at the warnings, recording everything on tape. Their laughter lasted until midnight, when the bell began to ring. The recordings, what fragments were recovered, captured their fear. The sound of the bell, the frantic whispers of shadows moving all around them, the cries of one student screaming, "It's asking for us. It's asking." The tape ends there. Their bodies were never found, only the recorder, lying at the foot of the altar. Some believe the chapel no longer demands offerings from villagers. It has grown patient. It chooses its victims from those who seek it out, from the arrogant, the curious, the ones who believe themselves untouchable. But others believe the truth is far worse, that each cycle is building toward something greater, that these so-called final offerings are not final at all, but pieces of a ritual Father Malrick never finished. A ritual meant to open the crack beneath the altar fully, to let something ancient, something unspeakable, step into our world. And if the chapel ever finds the one willing or foolish enough to complete the rite, the bell will not toll for one. It will toll for us all.